Tate, appreciate the time. Tate Frazier from The Ringer, One Shining
Oh, yeah.
Podcast, Figures Network.
Of course, man. Happy to be here. There's a lot to get to, a lot of great names and a lot of big picks. And you've been locked in and you were feeding me information on One Shining Podcast the entire season. And a lot of our sleepers, our hidden gems, turned into first round picks and lottery picks. So who would have thought? So shout out to you.
It pays to watch the games, huh?
Yeah, who would have thought?
Yeah, it's you've been feeding the OSPers some good intel throughout the year. But yeah, 2-day draft. We knew Cooper was going 1. We knew Joan was going 2. We pretty much knew VJ was going 3. Draft kind of started at 4. Your Charlotte Hornets take Knueppel. What do we think?
I like the pick. I like Knueppel. I watched this slam video earlier today, and it was Knueppel, and he was getting asked, like, greatest defender ever. He's like Michael Jordan, best player ever, Michael Jordan, best WNBA player, A'ja Wilson, best team ever, 86 Celtics. I'm like, how's this guy know all the answers? That is Knueppel, because when you watch him play, like, he almost shocks you how spry he is and how he is so quick to the ball, and he has this kind of anticipatory thing. And I went to the Carolina Duke game this year. Knueppel, after the game, as he walked out after the win, he thanked everyone in the Dean Dome crowd for coming out that night, in a very polite and nice way. He's got 4 other brothers. They've been beating each other up. He's a tough kid. I like the fit. They needed someone who could be what I would call a culture setter, right? Knueppel, they like him. Charles Lee is the head coach. They like him. Jeff Peterson in the front office. He's a person who understands the state of North Carolina. He's been there at Duke. He's going to have fans that like him. Down at Selwyn Pub, they're going to be celebrating Knueppel, diving on the floor after loose balls. The Hornets needed a grown-up, even though he's a young kid, but they needed someone that's just going to be very professional about the operation. I think Brandon Miller is a superstar. You and I both obviously are big fans of Brandon Miller. I like Knueppel next to him, and I like Liam McNeely as well. I love that class together. But when they made the pick for Khan, it felt like all intel said Khan, but there was a little bit of me that was like, hey, Ace is sitting right there in front of you, and Ace Bailey and Brandon Miller, that is a very tantalizing wing duo. I mean, dare I say, like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum territory with maybe a little bit more explosion. But Khan was a good pick, and I like the pick.
It's kind of like this elephant in the room. It's like everyone's saying they're going Khan. It makes sense. Like, it's a very solid, balanced player. Played at Duke. All the intel, all the leaks were positive in his direction. But then you're kind of just like, for lack of a better term, let's go Ace. Like, I can see that. So Utah 5, both of us went on the Utah Jazz podcast network throughout pre-draft and pretty much said like, hey man, like, I don't know if the Angels are passing on Ace Bailey if he's there. We talked to JP Chunga. He's like, man, to be this committed to the youth movement and to not make it to the commercial break at the lottery, Utah and the Wizards, like, that was really disappointing. So I think you take Ace at 5. Obviously, he's become more polarizing than I think anyone could have expected with the pre-draft stuff, his skill set, the media, everything. But I like the pick. I think Utah is in a great position to take risk. I think they're in a great position to go for an upside swing. You have tremendous synergy from the ownership to the front office to the coaching staff. They got a lot of optionality with their roster. They don't really have a marquee guy. They've taken some swings on certain players, but I like the pick. I think, there's a lot of scrutiny with Ace. I think he has the opportunity to prove a lot of people wrong. We're talking about, 6'9" shot maker, some defensive upside, raw, young. Like, there's so much more he can improve on. And, we're walking away round 1 with that kid at 5. I'm feeling pretty excited about what he could develop when he's, 23, 22 years old.
Absolutely. And Knueppel, it's kind of interesting. I think that Utah probably had Khan number 1 on their board because they assumed that Ace would be off the board. Let's just be frank about it. Like, you would think that Ace would go in the top 4 picks. I would assume he would go in the top 3 picks. I mean, in my heart of hearts, I would say maybe in the top 2 picks. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about Ace Bailey. So, that is what's fascinating to me because Charlotte kind of took that predicament off the board for the Utah Jazz, right? They didn't have a situation where they had to choose between their number 1 guy, Knueppel, which JP had kind of mentioned, that they really like Khan as well. So they didn't have to worry about Khan versus Ace and making that decision. It's like the Hornets made the decision for them. There were reports that there were some teams, maybe the Wizards wanted to trade up to 4 to get Ace, right? And then the Hornets would drop back to 6. The Hornets didn't want to do that because they were scared the Jazz would then take Khan at 5. So they weren't going to be able to get the guy that they like in Khan, so they get him at 4. So that kind of musical chairs between those 3 players in particular was really fascinating because the Hornets just go with the guy who came into their building, wanted to be in their building, was happy to be in their building, was happy to do a workout, was excited about the future of the franchise and where he sort of fit into the equation. Let's take him. Let's not do something where we have a question mark, because last year they took a swing, right? Salon was a swing. You've already done that. You have this kind of project who I actually really like. I think Salon's going to develop and become a good player. So Khan can be more of a safer pick because you've already done the big swing. You know what I mean? So in context, context makes a lot of sense. You know what I mean? So I like the pick. There you go. We got content out of it. So there you go. Those 3, though, it could have gone any which way. And I'm happy for Ace that he went to Utah. And I think that Ace will be happy that he went to Utah when he sees how much playing time and shots that he has out there in Utah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a win-win for either side. Obviously, there was some theatrics involved, but it is funny. Like, Khan was kind of this domino, right? So, like, the lottery, I feel like if Washington ended up getting the 3rd pick, they would have taken Ace 3rd. So then you're talking about, does Charlotte go VJ? It's interesting how it all went down, but we talked Trey Johnson. Obviously, the Wizards were linked. I think Windhorst confirmed, but like they were trying to get up to 4 to get Ace Bailey. That was their guy. That was assumed to be the kind of direction Ace Bailey's camp wanted to go. Would have been an awesome fit, to be honest. You got Bub, you got Bilal, you got Alex Starr, Keyshawn. But Trey Johnson goes 7. Trey Johnson goes 6. I think this is great value for them. For someone like to fall to 6 and get a player that, I'm not shocked if he ends up a top 5 player from this class. The scoring, the instincts, the competitiveness. I mean, what this guy did in the SEC at his age, just like a hooper. I was watching Will Dawkins' press conference, and he's just like, dude's obsessed with basketball. Like, he's a hooper. I saw in Chicago, I think I texted you this in Chicago. It's like 11:30 at night on a Wednesday. Trey Johnson's like dribbling down, like South Loop, Chicago, like the nicest part of the city, just like dribbling a basketball between the legs, headphones on.
Yeah.
Like, this dude's a hooper through and through. What do you think about Washington's coup?
I think that Ace was definitely kind of the pie in the sky, and obviously that's its own separate conversation. But Trey Johnson is if that is a consolation prize, which I wouldn't view it as that, then it's a hell of a consolation prize because, like you said, if you watch this guy, I believe it was the Arkansas game that Trey Johnson, he had 39 points or whatever. It was like a Texas freshman record, which broke KD's record. He has like this natural ability to go off. And you mentioned he has no other hobbies. He said he just got his first book that he was going to read. So basketball and a book. That is Trey Johnson right now. I kind of like that setup for who he is. DC will love him. They will embrace him. I think Bub Carrington, he's our guy. We really like Bub, and I like that fit with him. They got a long, lengthy front court. So, I mean, what they're doing in Washington with the size feels very Houstonian. You know what I mean? It feels like what the Rockets had going, where you just get a lot of size, a lot of length. You throw it out there. You kind of see what happens. Maybe you get some guards to create around them. Bub Carrington, a perfect example of that. And I think that Trey, they'll empower him maybe as like a 6-man scoring role, and he can grow from there and maybe grow into an actual starting shooting guard and become sort of a creator himself, because he does have that vision. You saw flashes of it where you're like, oh yeah, this guy could definitely be that type of A1 player. I think he does want it. I think he does have the right head for it because, like you said, he loves basketball. That's half the battle right there. So DC, just incubate him, give him some room to grow. They got Poole out of the way, so he's got some shots there if they're willing to give it to him. I think the sky's the limit. I really like that pick.
Yeah, me too. They're getting a bunch of kind of guys that can initiate, guys that can play make, guys that can score off the bounce. They end up trading back. So we just talked Utah. Walter Clayton ends up going 18th with the Wizards pick, which we both like Walter. I think everyone likes Walter. He's probably the least polarizing player in the entire draft. The shot making, they're showing his daughter on screen, pretty emotional. His mom, national champion, just a flat out dog. Like, he's just he's a dog. Arguably the most explosive, 3-point shooter in the class. But they end up trading back to 21, get their guy Will Riley, who Dawkins at his press conference pretty much, he didn't say straight up, but like, alluded like that was the guy. So they played the board. You always like to see a team play the board, end up with their guy. Will Riley's another one, right? Like, I feel like he really fits into what they're building. Bunch of like long, kind of like wiry shot makers, playmakers, dudes with size, length, feel, quick processors, something I really liked. So Dawkins was saying that they were watching the Rutgers game. This is in February. And they said something that really drew them to Will Riley was the competitiveness and the toughness when like Kasparas was injured, started to struggle, turn it over. They started giving Will Riley the ball in his hands at the end of the season. And that was like my exact takeaway. I'm at this game. I'm like texting at the timeouts of this game. Like all the different NBA people are dispersed across Jersey Mike's arena. And it's like, or formerly the Rack. And it's like
Yeah, shout
everyone's
out.
saying the same thing. They're like, Will Riley's making a lot of money right now. Ends up he goes to Washington. But like, I think that has potential to be one of the steals of the draft. He develops the right way. At 21, you're looking at someone with like big time upside. He's just got to develop his frame. But like by the end of the year, him, Cooper Flagg, I would say are the two most improved players in all of college basketball from, November to March.
Yeah, and Will Riley showed like a flutter. He showed like a little bit of it early in the season. He had like a 30-point game that was kind of like, oh, wow, this kid's legit, right? This freshman at Illinois. And Illinois was such a hodgepodge of a team that it felt so you couldn't believe how good they were because you were like, I didn't even know that they were going to have these guys on the roster. Like, who is this? And Will Riley really shocked you early on. And like you said, he had that maturation period throughout the season. Carter Bryant had that as well, where it was just like, that is what's really encouraging. You talk about green flags. It's like, okay, I see them processing power ramping up as the season's going on, and they're getting better and better, making better reads, making better decisions, seeming like they're more in control. Things are slowing down for them. So that's a very good skill. And, you talk about size. You can play him at the 3. You could have, Trey Johnson at the 2, Bub at the 1. That's a lot of size and a lot of shooting and, a lot of playmaking potentially. So, I mean, that would be really solid for Washington.
Yeah, I like the pick. I think Washington fans, they're really active on Twitter with the draft because they got the young guys. So the Washington fans, I think, should be pretty excited. So after Trey Johnson at 6, this was another kind of domino in the top 10, I'd say. It was linked. There was some rumblings, some murmurs, but Jeremiah Fears goes 7 to New Orleans. Fears, I think you coined it, zero fear. But like real dynamic on the ball, best handle in the class, just so kind of like explosive downhill, gets to the paint at will. Interesting pick. So there's some buzz about Derik Queen potentially going 7. They end up taking Fears as 7, trading back in at 13 with the Hawks to get Derik. First off, what's your take on the Fears? Go Fears at 7. Obviously, there was some Fears interest in Brooklyn at 8. So this is kind of a domino of the back half of the lottery.
This to me feels kind of like a Dumars pick because Dumars is such a guard guy. And I do feel like that the only person that has really proven that small guards can win a title as the main guy is Isaiah Thomas. And guess who his running mate was? Joe Dumars. So if there's anyone that can believe a small guard with a type of moxie and a type of kind of, cachet about the way that they play can do it, it's probably Joe Dumars. So maybe he saw something in Jeremiah Fears. And if you've watched Fears play, you can see why he would see something. Now we can point to 28% from the 3-point line. We can point to, some of the mechanics with the shot, all this sort of stuff. I've heard it over and over again, but just watch Jeremiah Fears play the game of basketball. And I promise you'll come away and say, okay, he looks like a future NBA All-Star. He is raw. I think there is going to be some natural development there. But again, I'm a big fan of Joe. He's always been great throughout my, career, just with basketball, insights and things like that. He's willing to share. He's back home in a place where he feels very comfortable in Louisiana. So I feel like he's going to have kind of a say as to what's going to happen down there. So for him to go after Fears and identify him as a guard that he likes as an A1 league guard, that says a lot about Jeremiah Fears, right? This is a high bar, I feel like, to pass in his world. So I would take that as a good sign if I'm a New Orleans fan. And then they obviously already love Derik Queen. So once they had Fears still on the board, I think that's when they were like, okay, we're going to swing for Fears, and then we're going to figure out a way to go back and get Queen, whatever it takes to get Queen, because we really want Queen. Because like you said, a lot of people thought he might even go as high as 7. So I like it that they end up getting 2 guys that in their minds were probably lottery talents, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a high conviction draft, right? Like you get 2 players that maybe they could be considered their guys. So I see a lot of like, whether it's I'm getting texts or I'm seeing the leaks on Twitter from Windhorse and a couple other NBA guys where people are really questioning the move. I would just say, like, let's wait and see, right? Like that, I think them trading, a high value 2026 pick to come back into the ladder and get Derik, they walk away with Fears and Derik Queen. I think all that really shows is a tremendous belief in who Derik can be as a player. I think
Straight
we'll put
up.
it, yeah, like I think it's way too early to overanalyze this. Like, obviously 2026 draft is going to be pretty high level, but
Well, if they just put any
yeah.
protections, I know this pick is like, obviously because they have the optionality with Milwaukee as well. And that's why it's such a, big topic or whatever. Obviously, Joe would have put some protections if he could. Atlanta was like, yeah, we want it without any protections. But Milwaukee's going to play. Like, they're going to go for it. Giannis isn't going anywhere as far as we know. So Giannis, that version of the swap won't be great. And then New Orleans, they're expecting Zion to play and to be good next year. They're expecting Zion to have like a resurgent year. That is everything that I have heard. That is the expectation. So we'll see if that actually happens. But that is the expectation. So they expect to be good. So they're like, our pick's going to be, 15, 16, 17 range in their mind. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but I understand without any protections, it does look insane.
Yeah, I try to always go through the lens of, like, if you're listening to this and you want us to say some crazy shit about winners and losers and this GM's dumb, blah, blah, like, go watch First Take. Like, we're people that,
Right.
like, appreciate the basketball stuff. But I think it just shows a lot of conviction. Like, they think he's the guy, so they went and got him. And then the next pick, similar mold. Brooklyn goes Egor Demin at 8. Egor emerged as one of the more polarizing guys too. I've been probably pretty high on him compared to most throughout the year. Has been in the top 10 on our board from preseason on. Interesting pick. I, before the draft, kind of penciled Brooklyn as maybe one of the more interesting spots for Egor, just because the coaching staff, they're kind of a blank slate still, where they got a bunch of young guys. Give him a lot of freedom. He's going to be able to learn on the ball, maybe play a little bit off of the ball. Interesting pick. I think it's probably one of the more intriguing picks at 8. They end up taking. So they take Egor at 8. They pair Egor with Nolan Traore at 19, downhill guard, which I kind of like the pairing. You get someone who's a big-time playmaker. His biggest weakness is putting pressure downhill. You pair him with a super speedy, elite burst French point guard. Then they go Drake Powell at 22, with both of us have been hearing there was potentially a promise there, not a well-kept secret for 2 months.
I think they told a bunch of people and they were waiting for someone to report it. And I think that everybody was just trying to be nice. But yeah, I mean, I respect the fact that they're like, we like Drake and we have 5 picks and he's probably going to be one of them. So good for the Nets. They got what they wanted.
Yeah, it's always funky. Like, I'm still new to this, but you hear like something like that and it's kind of like, well, why is that so open? Like, right? Like why is that public? But
I think that, what you have to remember and what we all have to remember a lot of the time with the scuttlebutt is that this is more agents than anyone. You know what I mean? Like, front office guys aren't going around just like, hey, what are you hearing? Or, hey, let me give you. I mean, maybe they'll give you something every once in a while, but you got to be really smart about what you react to because, again, agents and things you hear. That was the best note I got a long time ago from BJ Armstrong. He was like, there's a reason somebody's telling you something. So always think about that. So, obviously Brooklyn wanted everybody to know they wanted Drake Powell and they got him. So congratulations.
yeah, so they get Drake and then they go Ben Saraf, Israeli point guard.
D'Angelo Russell of Israel is what they said.
That was a bold statement.
Yeah, that was wild.
Especially on live television. 26, they go Ben Saraf. Then they go Danny Wolf from Michigan, one of the more unique players in the entire draft. A lot to unpack with Brooklyn. So they have 5 first-round picks. Everyone's talking about, whether they're dispersing ammo to go and get Dylan or go and get Ace or potentially get one of these young assets across the league that's available. They end up picking all 5. And they don't just get 5 young players. They get like 4 playmakers and 1 kind of like rangy wing. Unique draft. I didn't expect them to keep all 5, to be honest. I'm sure they tried to move some of them. I don't know when's the last time 5 first-round picks all got selected. I don't know if that's ever happened, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly, I would assume this has got to be one of the first times, if not the first time. I would assume. I mean, Minnesota had 4 in 2009. That's the only time I could think of. I mean, I've seen 4, but 5 feels like the stretch. But I'm sure somebody has stats and info ready to go. But 5's a lot. 5's too many.
Five's a lot. Yeah, it's just a lot. I'm curious to see how it unfolds. The rotations of summer league, right? Like, Wolf could be good value at 27. We talk strictly skill set, strictly off the film, the basketball of it. Like he's a pretty talented player. He can pass, he can shoot, streaky kind of a shooter, but he's shown the ability to knock down shots. Physical in the lane, can rebound. Defensively, he can get probably going to be a learning curve. He can get picked on a little bit with his foot speed, but like he's got really good, just unsurprisingly, with the way he handles the ball. But he has really good hand-eye coordination. So like maybe he'll get like caught on scrambles and like high-level basketball reads at the NBA, but like I think there's a lot to work with there. I was a little bit lower on Saraf on my board. I had him like a second round grade, early second. But I'm intrigued to see how it goes. I think Powell is an interesting swing. I kind of felt he was gonna go somewhere in those like 20s. But like we've seen like rangy wings that are young, maybe don't have the freshman years they expect. Like there always could be some value there if the teams are willing to kind of nurture them long term.
Yeah, and a lot of times these guys come in and they don't even really have skill sets yet. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, you have to project what their scoring skill set is going to be, and that's why you have a Michael Kidd-Gilchrist situation, right? And a guy like a Harrison Barnes that they were forecasting to be like a Kobe Bryant primary scorer. You know what I mean? It's like hard to know what these wings will translate and turn out to be. I mean, Jason Tatum seems to be the blueprint of what you want these wings to turn out and turn into at some level. We'll give Jaylen Brown some credit as well in there, but I mean that's the general conceit. I think that Brooklyn kicked the can this year and they kicked it the next year. And they basically, by making all 5 of these picks, said to everybody in the NBA, we are also tanking again. The tank is back on. And I think that Egor they really liked, obviously, but guess who they'd love to pair him with? His college, teammate, AJ Debinca. So, like, if I'm Brooklyn, I feel like this is a long game to get Egor in the building, give him like a groom year, and then go after AJ and get him in, whatever range it is. And then you get AJ and Egor and they're in Brooklyn together. That's what I think is happening right now.
Next level chess. I like the strategic thinking. I like Egor. I've been saying it all year.
Me too. Yeah.
People are like so negative in our DMs and like
well, he
in the
wouldn't be
comment
there
section.
at 19. Well, he wouldn't be there at
Yeah.
19. And that's the thing. Like the way that they did this, they were like, the Bulls are going to take him at 12. So we either take him at 8, which is a little too high, or we don't get him at all because we're going to lose him. So they just took him at 8. I understand.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think I've been saying all year, probably ad nauseum, like that foundation of tools is just something you don't really see. Like he's really gifted, playmaker, smart kid, kind of like curious, loves basketball. And then like people pick apart his shooting. Like he shot the same percentage as Jeremiah Fears.
Yeah, right.
one's 6'3", one's 6'9". So do that what you will. But yeah, I watched him work out in Chicago. I mean, that's not end all be all, but like he's gotten better throughout the year. I think
he also doesn't have to be the point guard. You know what I mean? I feel like
exactly.
Everyone's like, can he? Well, he can't be the point guard. It's like, well, he's the size of a wing. So wouldn't it be great to have Franz Wagner right over here and have a secondary creator? That'd be nice. So like, I don't understand that we have to put him in this box of a point guard too. I feel like that's really dumb.
Yeah, Brian Wright actually talked about that in his presser last night when they're asking about, Dylan Harper, you got a lot of guards, like you consider moving it because of positional fit. And he's like, honestly, like, did you just watch the playoffs? Like, why are we wasting time on positional fit? Like, we should really be looking at like how they fit character wise, or what are the traits they need to develop, or what's the swing skill, or like how adaptable they are. And I 100% agree. I think it's incredibly limiting to like look at Egor through, is he a point guard? Is he a wing? It's just like, why can't he play a little bit 1 through 3, secondary playmaking? If he can shoot it, he can kind of do everything offensively. He's smart enough to make quick reads off a closeout. He got a lot of hockey assists at BYU. Just like, some guys, their high feels like they need the ball, right? Like he needs a ball screen. Like he needs to dribble it and, dribble the air out of the basketball to showcase his IQ. The reason why I've been drawn to Egor is like, he don't need to dribble the ball. Quick hits in transition, quick extra. I mean, there's times he gets a rebound. He has eyes in the back of his head, can find shooters. So I'm interested to see how they empower him. But at 9, this is a pick like we talk about the leaks. Like they kept saying this could be a pick that was getting shopped at 9. Some people say it's an 8-player draft. They go Boyles. I think we talked about it a little bit on OSP. Boyles has grown on me throughout like the past 2 years. Like I think he's just kind of a beast, and I love that he landed in Toronto playing for Darko. Like it's honestly one of my favorite fits of the entire draft.
Yeah, when they made the pick, I thought they made the pick for OKC because there was a lot of rumblings that OKC really liked Collin Murray-Boyles and they were going to trade up potentially. And like you said, everyone was like, "Are they shopping number 9? Like, what are the Raptors going to do?" So when they took him, I was like, "Oh, we're going to get the Adam Silver, update on the trade, in about 20 minutes here." But fortunately, I feel like they decided to keep him, and I do think it is a really good fit. And they have a star. You have Scotty Barnes, right? You have a lot of talent up there in Toronto. You need somebody who can kind of fit an identity, fit a role, a guy who's got a kind of grown up, mature mentality, which, he's like we should send him to be the valedictorian of this class. You know what I mean? Collin Murray-Boyles is just like, just a good dude, by all accounts, it seems. So I feel like, of course, he killed the draft process. Of course, everybody was very excited to kind of, get him in their building and get him, kind of through their process. And everyone loved him and everyone came away with rave reviews. So it makes sense for Toronto to do this. I'm happy he's staying in Toronto. Again, I thought this was a draft to trade somewhere else. And he probably thought that maybe at some level too. But, Masai and, the whole team is sitting there and they're saying, hey, we got a defensive weapon, a defensive stopper here. Let's get him and see if we can make, him work with the group that we have here currently. So I like the move for the Raptors.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, if we talk players who had like positive buzz from interviews throughout this process, I think, I heard great things about him. Cedric Coward, who we're going to talk about next, is
Yeah,
probably the
for sure.
most advanced kind of buzz from interviews. And then like Khan, VJ, a couple other guys, Carter Bryant, I think interviewed really well. But like people were astonished and like really impressed with how Boyles kind of presents himself, how he communicates like the situation he was in, right? Like they got thrown around in the SEC this year. And Bobby Webster was just pretty much talking about, explaining the pick. He's like that level of defensive playmaking, the size, the strength, the like know-how, right? Like he just knows how to play. So when you break that down, it's like, all right, well, in their system, players have been really successful with those traits. Then they said, they sat down with them. They're like, okay, we like the kid. Like he knows what he needs to get better at. So it's like, all right, well, what are we really overthinking? All right, well, the shooting, right? So if you think you can turn him into a solid average shooter, I mean, it's no brainer top 10 pick. So I like the pick. I like the fit. Honestly, like that was probably one we got now. So I was like, ooh, Boyles could Murray-Boyles could be really good. But the next goes, so Maluach goes 10 to the Suns. They get some front court depth. They also make that trade. A little bit confusing the way,
Feels like they
came
made
out.
that trade in principle before they knew that Maluach. I think they thought that Maluach wasn't going to be there, and then he was, and then they were like, "Well, hey, we had no centers. Now they have Nick Richards, Maluach, and Mark Williams, so they're 3 deep now."
Yeah, it was just kind of weird how it was presented, right? Because it's like the way
Yeah,
Shams put it out, you're kind of like, oh, maybe this pick's on the move. Like maybe someone came and got Maluach. But I love Khaman. I'm rooting for him. One of the most
me
joyful
too.
players I've interacted with this year. He
Seems
just
just like
has
a
like
good dude.
yeah, he
Yeah.
just lights up a room. I saw a video yesterday. They're on the bus on the way to the green room, and he's like reenacting the Duke like intros for Khan and Cooper, and he's an interesting kid. But 11th pick, our guy Cedric. So when I say
Woo.
our guy, they're all our guys, right? Like I want all these players to do well. I'm sure you do as
Yeah, for
well.
sure. Yeah, yeah,
Besides
yeah.
besides the Dukies, but
There's enough haters out there. There's enough people rooting against everybody. You know what I mean? Like that's I made that turn when I turned 30. I decided I was like, this decade I'm gonna root for everybody because like you get in the. I was in my 20s. You're scratching and surviving. You're clawing around. You know what I mean? And then you're just like, what are we even doing here? I hope everybody wins. So let's root for everybody. ELE. Everybody love everybody.
yeah, for sure. So Cedric goes 11. Grizzlies trade up to get him. I was told the Grizzlies were going to go even higher if they could. They were trying to get a pick from that like 9-10 range. They
Mm-hmm.
were going to go and get Cedric, from what I was told. I love the pick. Memphis has been someone that, their front office has, we talk about conviction. They've shown a lot of conviction, a lot of trust in their evaluation, a lot of, like just kind of trusting their own process within the draft. And they've had a lot of hits. So them going up and getting Cedric, if you haven't seen Cedric play, you're, a Grizzlies fan watching this. Division 3 to the green room. One of the cooler journeys in the entire draft.
Mm-hmm.
0-star recruit. has a couple Division III offers. Go to Willamette University in Oregon, kills it. Goes to Eastern Washington for Coach David Riley, one of the top young coaches in college basketball. Develops there for 2 years. Follows him to Washington State. Plays 6 games. Gets injured. Damn near 50, 40, 90. But like he fits the mold, right? He's that archetype that every NBA team scours the globe for. 40% 3-point shooter. Reads the floor solid. Okay handle. Still developing there, but like can make basic reads. Defensively, he makes plays. Rebounds with, a ferocious nature. And then you sit down with them. I said this on Tate's podcast. Like, I'm probably talking to 150 players over the past year and a half. It was the most impressive interview every time I talked to him. Like the level of self-awareness, humility, and then just like maturity in the way he conveys what he's good at, what he's not good at, what he needs to improve, his journey is special. So I think that's the type of player, they're probably ecstatic, especially after getting Wells, also from Wazoo last year. He was the hit of the draft at 37. I love the pick, and I'm happy to see him land in that type of organization where I think it's a good balance of he should be able to play early. There's going to be a certain level of competition, and then I think development is going to be a big emphasis. And I think for someone like him, he's 21, late bloomer. If we're talking upside wise, I feel like he's more like a 19-year-old, more like a 20-year-old, just because he doesn't have those high level reps. So that's someone I'm really excited to watch develop. I wouldn't bet against him. And I think the Grizzlies are feeling pretty confident they walked away with some real value outside the top 10 of the draft.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Memphis Grizzlies front office and what they've been able to do kind of on the margins. Jalen Wells was a great pick. You and I loved Jalen Wells last year and what he was able to do this year, finished third rookie of the year voting. I mean, this is an unknown guy to end up being in that position. That says a lot. Now, I know it says a lot also about that rookie class last year, but that's not a conversation we want to have right now. Let's talk about Cedric Coward and Jalen Wells. I mean, that duo, a 2 and a 3, 6'6", 6'7", with the shooting that they both have and, what Jalen really has and what Cedric, I think, will turn into, because I think Cedric is going to end up being a really good quality player as a shooting guard. And, you mentioned it. Yes, he is 21 years old. And yes, he does need some of those high level reps, but they have a nice group around them and a surprisingly young group that kind of is on the same timeline. Like Jaren Jackson and Ja are the old heads now. Like the rest of the team is all younger guys. And like in my mind's eye, if I saw a version of like, Cedric in his second year and we get like Ja playing the points, Cedric at the 2, Jalen at the 3, Gigi Jackson at the 4, Jaren Jackson at the 5. That's a pretty formidable lineup with a lot of length, a lot of versatility, and a lot of shot making that I think is really fascinating. And those two guys, like, how Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson were with the Suns, with like the early Suns days. I think that's going to be a little bit of what we get with Jalen Wells and Cedric Coward. Like they already have the Wazoo background. They're obviously friends with each other already. I'm actually going up to Pullman tomorrow. I'm going to be in Pullman for a wedding. I'm going to see Coach Riley, talk to him about the draft, and go around the facilities a little bit in Pullman. So we're going to have some fun there. But yeah, I mean, they're fired up. They said the Memphis Grizzlies are basically Wazoo South. So there's going to be a lot of Grizzlies fans up there in Pullman. So I'm excited to watch them.
That's legendary. I like it. I 100% agree. It's like I'm almost at the level where next year on my big board, I might just put all the late bloomers and wings in the top 10 and just put everyone else after.
Right.
I feel like that's
what we love.
Yeah. I mean, you look in the playoffs, right? I mean, Jalen Williams, late bloomer, wing. Jalen Wells hit. Like, they're all across the NBA. I think this could be a whole podcast, but with the level of accessibility and marketing and opportunistic media companies with these high schoolers, I almost feel like it's even more of an advantage to not be found early. Meaning that, like, if you're a Cedric Coward or a Jalen Williams, where you can just like play your AAU games without having to worry if the right mixtape's coming out after the game, or dumb people like me are trying to interview at events. Like, if you can just develop in silence and go through some adversity, I think that's a huge, just like psychological advantage. You get a growth mindset, you get a chip on your shoulder. And I think it's no accident that like all the breakout players in the NBA right now, outside of the Anthony Edwards, the marquee talents, I don't think it's just like an accident. I think like it's a real psychological advantage to develop that way.
Yeah, because I also feel like once you get the marker on you, a 5-star, or, I'm the number one guy in my class or whatever, like to put it in golf terms, I'm in a golf mindset these days, but like when you're trying to hit a shot, you know what I mean? When you're thinking about all the other trouble around, you don't just hit the shot, you know what I mean? Like you're almost like guiding it out there. You almost kind of like chicken wing it, right? You're not going to hit the true pure shot. When you really don't think about the other parameters and you just think about the goal in the distance, the flag stick, and you just swing and you're pure and you're through and it feels like this is what I got to do, it just comes off right. And I feel like that happens with some of these guys who are off the beaten path where they have a little bit of the freedom, because it's unfortunate what we do to these kids. You know what I mean? Like we're doing this to 12-year-olds now. I feel like it moved in my lifetime. It has moved down like a year. It was like when I was a kid, it was like 17, 16, you know what I mean? Then it was like 15. Then it was like 14. Now it's like 12, you know what I mean? Like we get that Debone kid, Muhammad Debone, the 7-foot 12-year-old,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? That was like, I was like, we moved down to 12 now. So it's so much pressure. And I think you're right. Like when you don't have that on your back and you're not worried about the mistakes or like ruining the whole thing, you can be more free and you can put in the work, and then, the rest is history. So confidence also, my God, I mean, confidence matters. And, you go to these things and you get your confidence crushed, it can change your whole future. And I think some of these guys not having that happen to them, like Steph Curry, it's a big thing. You know what I mean? Stay off in your own world and then show up when you're ready to go.
I 100% agree. I spoke about it with Phil Beckner. He was saying like confidence is like a crisis right now in these young players because everything's
Yeah.
so artificial, and you get built up this way that it makes it really difficult to actually naturally gain that confidence because so much is, anointed. But we could go 2 hours on that.
Well, and you also
Um,
got like shoe companies involved who like
yeah.
they're moving up your value. So like now I'm the number one guy, but am I really the number one guy? You got your own anxieties. Like, I mean, and these are kids, It's just crazy how much like almost the NBA brand model is now like at middle school. And I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but I mean, I don't get it. So, like you said, conversation for another day.
Yeah, it's a big one to crack. But so Cedric goes 11. Noah Essengue goes 12 to the Bulls. We're gonna skip over that one just for time. Interesting pick. Kind of fits the Chicago.
Very Bulls pick. Most Bulls pick on the board. Like Egor Demin got taken, so the Bulls could not take him. So then they took Noah Essengue. He was number 2 on the board. So that's how that felt.
Yeah, he's one. I'm just fascinated to see how his career goes. He's kind of a unique mover. He's productive, but it's kind of hard to label his direct skill set. Do you know if he's kind of more of a big or a forward or a wing? He's kind of like a in between there, but he's definitely got some good upside. We talked about Derik going 13 to the Pelicans via the pick from Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
14, Spurs kind of just get like the most Spurs pick. Like Carter
Yeah.
Bryant goes 14. A lot of the questions I put up on Instagram, like Q&A, I got like 4 or 5 questions like, how the hell did the league let the Carter Bryant go to the Spurs? And Brian Wright actually said in his presser, he's like, we were a little surprised he was there. But yeah, Carter Bryant makes a lot of sense to the Spurs. 3 and D, 6'8", 7-foot wingspan, young, good character, shoots it, defensive versatility, rebounds. Like it really just, it makes sense.
Does it feel like this could be, because going into this draft, I mean, everyone was saying the Spurs draft was like the 2022 OKC draft when they got Chet number 2 and then they got Jalen Williams at 12. So this was like the similar setup where Dylan Harper would be the number 2 pick and then you get Carter Bryant at 14. Obviously, that is flip where like Chet's the number 3 and Jalen's the number 2. Like, is there a world where like Carter Bryant is unleashed and Carter Bryant's like jumps Dylan Harper in the order? Like where he's actually the real prize possession of this draft. I just, I was just thinking about that as like an exercise. I love Dylan Harper. I think he's the best pick and roll, reader in real time that we have in this draft, and he's going to be great. But I just thought about that last night as I was watching. I was like, there could be a world in which where Carter Bryant is like, we're like, I can't believe this guy went number 14, right?
Yeah, I think it's been proven the past couple of drafts. Like you really can't underestimate some of these wings that can do a little bit of everything. Adaptability is the kind of the most valuable thing right now in the NBA. Everyone used to say the buzzword was versatility. Now it's kind of adaptability. But yeah, Carter, I mean, in high school, I watched him in high school. It was like he's breaking dudes off the bounce. He loved the mid range. I interviewed him. He's like, I watched Tatum, I watched Kawhi, I watched Paul George. Like he kind of thought of himself as more of a, like go get it type of guy. I think you give him credit for scaling down his role at Arizona. Was very efficient, low usage, and I think that gets him in the door. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
right.
mean, Dylan Harper, it's tough to project that, right? Like Dylan Harper is so ready for the NBA, so versatile, strong, creative, just kind of fits the mold of like these big guards that are running the NBA. But yeah, Carter, if he can develop his handle, if he's able to get a little bit more creative and efficient with his like shot diet and create advantages off the bounce, we're looking at a guy who can do a little bit of everything. So I think definitely looking back in a couple years, this could be a really, really high value pick at 14 for a young organization that is rich. they got a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
they got a lot to work with. They they get Dylan Harper at 2 after getting Victor. I mean, God bless. 15, one of my favorite picks. We talked Sorber on your show throughout the season. Kind of had a feeling this was going to be an OKC type guy ever since
Mhm.
maybe January. But, preseason, when scouts are going to practice, they're like, shoot, like Sorber really chiseled his frame. He improved his body.
Mhm.
He was very productive in like EYBL, played at Archbishop Ryan, I think. He's from Trenton, but like bruising presence, kind of evolved his game. And now he's just super adaptable on both ends of the floor. The passing, the instincts, the length. He's got a 7'6" wingspan. I think he's a no-brainer for OKC as they continue to have to pay all these guys. We talk about Joan Williams. That's a 9-figure man. He's going to get a
Yeah,
max.
right.
Chet's going to get a max. SGA's best player in the world outside Jokic. So they're going to need guys on the margins, on a rookie deal, on team-friendly deals that can add value. And I think his ability to read the floor, cover ground, especially horizontally with his long-ass arms,
Mhm.
anticipatory skills, great hands, kind of like magnetic hands. I just think he's
Great
like
hands.
perfect for them. Perfect for them.
I I feel like if it was 2005, Thomas Sorber would have gone like number 2 in the draft, right? Like not to be ridiculous about it, but he has great hands, and like any old head basketball dude that would just watch Thomas Sorber like go through a workout, any like guy in a gym that brings him in would be like, "Yeah, we want him." Because the frame is, I mean, it's a legit big frame, right? There's a difference between 6'9", 6'10", and you're like a slender man or you're one of these slinks or whatever, but like this is a huge guy, like, and he's gonna fill out and he's gonna be a real 5. And again, the hands are tantalizing. I think he's only getting better. So I'm a big Sorber believer. I love seeing Coach Cooley with Sorber. That was a nice moment for Coach Cooley. I think he should have been a lottery pick. I think, again, OKC probably looked at their board, saw Thomas Sorber number 6 or whatever he was on their board, and said, "Oh, great, we get him at number 15. Look at us, the rich get richer. Let's sign him up and let's get it going." So I love the fit and I love his game. I'm a big Sorber fan.
Yeah, I think it was one of the clean cut. Like they had the pick. Derik was gone. Boyles was gone. It just felt like, yeah, this has to be Sorber. So Sorber goes 15, 16. We get absolute wild card.
Yeah, this is when the draft really started. You know what I mean? Like as far as like it was super boring, kind of. You know what I mean? It was almost like as expected. Yegor maybe was a little bit ridiculous, but yeah, number 16 was wild.
So they trade out of 11. They were linked a lot to, people were mocking Kasparas there, mocking Carter Bryant was probably the most
Mm-hmm.
um, prevalent one. They decide to go Hansen Yang. They called him Yang Hansen. I've been hearing him called Hansen Yang for the longest time. But they get my man, Hansen Yang, major wild card. No one had him mocked in the first round. Was not brought up a lot. So he's kind of like this man of mystery. So I was very interested to hear, their president talk about what went into the pick. And he kind of broke it down as this has been someone they've been like pinpointing for 2 years now. They watched him in FIBA. He played very well against Alex Sarr. He's got some good tape. Developed in the CBA. Played in summer league. Played at the combine. But like you watch his highlights, I mean, one of the most fun players in the draft. There's this highlight, my favorite play from this year. He like is stuck, like dribble used or whatever. He throws it off the backboard and then dunks it. Like
Mm-hmm.
one of the most creative players in the draft. I was surprised, but like we'll see how it goes. I think it's really fun when a player this unique goes high in the draft because then they're going to merit some investment, and we're going to kind of see what it looks like fully revved up. But after this pick, this is when I got to my phone. I'm ripping text messages to everybody. I'm not going to be one of those people that acts like I know
Right.
everything. Like that was a big surprise to me. So it seems like, I texted, 10 plus people across kind of the NBA. Most people were surprised. There were a couple guys that were like, hey, man, I like Yang. Like I was talking
Mm.
about in our meetings. So I had two different people say he
Yang
might be
gang.
yes. Two different scouts that I trust said like he is potentially the best big in the draft if he's invested into because of the passing, the processing, the size. So like I love the pick. I don't know if I would have picked him, right? Like I wasn't Yang Gang. I think he was 38th on our final big board.
Yeah.
He could maybe prove us wrong there, but I thought it was a dynamic pick. It's kind of hard to hate that. I feel like it was perfect kind of halftime pick of the break up the first round.
I like that they did what they wanted to do. You know what I mean? Don't get bullied by the mock drafts. Don't get bullied by what you're supposed to do. Like if you've scouted this guy for 2 years and you were worried that someone was going to take him at number 23, I guess. I don't know what they were worried about. They could have got Hansen Young whenever, I don't know, but this was a fun pick. I think this was a pick for the brand. I think this was a pick for the market. I think so you got to respect that too. I understand what Portland's up to. I see what you're up to, Portland. They're trying to make sure they get some jerseys sold over there. I respect it, and I think they will get the jerseys sold. And how many sitters can they have in the on the Portland Trailblazers, by the way? I mean, my goodness, like is it Klingon? Is it now Yang? Is it Robert Williams? Is it DeAndre Ayton, former number 1 pick? So like, my goodness, there's so many centers in Portland, but it sounds like he's the one that they're going to invest in. Like you said, they take him at number 16, and then they were really happy about it. I saw like all signs were we got a big one. So and they did. I'm excited to watch them play. A lot of saucy passes. You know what I mean? A lot of over the head no looks.
Yeah, it's we have if you're interested in seeing him on our YouTube channel, the one you're watching right now, we have a highlight and it's pretty dynamic. It's funny.
Yeah,
My intern was telling me all year that I should have had him in the lottery. So my intern maybe needs a raise. But
there you go.
yeah, so and also signature moment, Rich Paul standing up. They show on ESPN. Rich Paul is just like escorts the 7'3" Hansen Yang down the crowd. He's in this white suit. He emerges from the shadows. That was I'm not gonna forget that one.
I can't believe he was at the draft, by the way. Yeah. Like that was the upset of the night. That felt like very WWE that like somehow he was there and Rich Paul was like dapping him up. He was like, I knew you were gonna get drafted in the lottery.
Yeah. But one of my favorite picks goes 17. Joan Beringer, French big man, late bloomer, only 18 years old, 6'11" barefoot, 7'4.5" wingspan, super explosive, rangy, fluid. He's flying all around defensively. He's only been playing like 3.5, 4 years. So he's still kind of figuring it out. But when we talk about like player fits, going to Minnesota where they can be incredibly patient with his development, they got a French anchor at the 5 in Rudy Gobert. And then you have, Tim Connelly, one of the best presidents in the NBA when we talk about identifying players in the draft, developing those players. I was ecstatic to see him go there. I'm someone that I just want to see all the players in like the best development situation so all of them can find success. So when I see someone like this land, at a situation where I feel like, everything is going to go in the right direction, right? Like he's going to have a lot of opportunities, I think, to develop, get better, and, be a good NBA player. So yeah, this was one of my favorite picks.
Yeah, it felt like a Rudy Gobert pick, and Tim Connelly's smart enough to go to Rudy and say, like, is this guy legit? Would you actually want to mentor? And I'm sure Rudy was like, yes, he is legit, and he's a really good player, and I think that would be a great fit. And you got to trust that front office. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, as much as, obviously OKC deserves to get lauded and praised right now because they just won the championship, like, don't miss out on what's happening in Minnesota because Tim Connelly being a free agent was a very big deal, and I think that they just got him signed and it's all good. But like, I mean, he knows what he's doing, so I think that's a really good pick.
Yeah, Minnesota's elite. I think just concretely very elite. That's a front office that you don't really need to question.
Right.
I thought it was cool. Their GM Matt Lloyd in his post-draft availability was like, you see the tools, you see the film, it's almost a no-brainer. And there's like, yeah, we sat down with him. We were astonished with his maturity level. He learned English in like 7 or 8 months out there in Slovenia. Someone that's really coming along late. So yeah, I love that pick. We kind of talked a little bit about pick 18. Utah goes and gets Walter Clayton. Everyone knows him. Final Four most outstanding player, flamethrower, elite shooter, tough, poise. He's kind of one of those guys. He would have went anywhere, and you would have been like, "Yup, good pick," right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm a big fan of Walter Clayton Jr. I just really did not. I mean, not that I did not, but like I didn't want it to be like, oh, he has to go to Miami or he has to go to Orlando. Like it did feel like he was getting almost boxed in, like he had to go like be some sort of like Florida mascot pick. And I think personally, it might be better for Walter Clayton Jr. to be in the middle of Utah and just have basketball to worry about. And I think the same for Ace Bailey. And I think that like Walter Clayton, obviously, I mean, he talked about the draft, like with his kid and everything, like he got like his priorities in order. I think that he's going to set a really good example for Ace. And I think that they're both like probably going to really like each other. Like, I think they're both going to have like a real respect for one another. You know what I mean? And they're definitely going to be fish out of water together in Utah. So I just like the mesh of those two, like an older Clayton that can mentor Ace a little bit, that kind of has his stuff together, but also can get away from all the different people grabbing at him in Florida that are just like, hey, well, we do this, do that. You know what I mean? He's going to be away from everything and it'll be about basketball. And look, the measurables matter, of course, but like sometimes people have special traits that, you know, you see and we all go, wow. And Walter Clayton Jr. did that in the tournament. I don't know if it's Kemba Walker. I don't know if it's Steph Curry. I don't know what level it is, but it's something. So if I'm Utah, I'm very excited, and I think it was a really good move to get back in and make a move for him.
Yeah, I love the shot making. They grabbed probably two of the most gifted shot makers in their draft. 118, one experience, played for Patino, kind of worked his way up through college. Very different journeys, like you said. I agree. I think a lot of times the rookies get paired together when they're in the same class. For Ace to have someone so experienced, so with that winning pedigree, the toughness. I mean, he's got a child. It's a little bit.
Yeah, like he's a grown up. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I feel like Ace, like Ace is gonna be fun. Like Ace is obviously like a very jovial kid. Like he's a fun kid. But I do think like when the work is the work, Walter Clayton is gonna show him like what the work looks like, and I think that's gonna be great for Ace. You know what I mean? And I think if they can work together, that's a win for Utah.
Definitely. I spoke to Walter in Chicago, and it's like the exact read is kind of what you just said. It's someone who's not about all the extra stuff, like very much just like was ready to get drafted, ready to get to summer league, ready to get to summer
Mm-hmm.
camp, like Hooper. So that's the top about 20. Nolan Traore goes 19. We kind of touched on that with Brooklyn. I kind of like the swing, super dynamic on the ball, talented. You know, he's someone that everyone acts like these mock drafts are factual. It's really difficult
Right.
to project the draft a year in advance. So, like, I'm sure a bunch of 2026 mock drafts are going to come out tomorrow. It's literally impossible. Like, outside the marquee guys, we talk about, you know, Nate Ament, Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, Cam Boozer. Like, those are probably going to be the top four guys next year. But there's always guys that emerge. There's always guys that plateau. And then there's a lot of players that are just developing in the shadows. So he was someone that was held in high regard. I was at Hoop Summit last year. He was frying. All the NBA
Mm-hmm.
executives were there. His pace, his poise, his passing in the pick and roll. He was dotting lobs to Khaman Maluach in practice, just putting on an absolute show. Had great momentum in ANGT, played in Eurobasket with France. And, you know, he's someone that, like, you know, as I put out my last board and I was really breaking down his game, he hasn't really had a break ever since last April. He's been playing nonstop. So I think it would be good for him, you know, after summer league to like recalibrate, you know, and I think there's some stuff to work with there. There's just that level of quickness and feel, the processing at high speed is, you know, very interesting. And then if you do believe in him and Egor, I mean, that's kind of the player you need next to Egor to maximize his talents. Egor's biggest weakness is he really struggles to separate. You know, he's 6'9", he's a huge dude. It's going to be tough to handle the ball at that size. Whereas Nolan, he can get downhill in a hurry. Doesn't need a ball screen. Terrific processor. So, yeah, we kind of spoken at depth at Brooklyn. 20 and 21, two fighting Illinois go back-to-back. Kasparas
Yeah.
goes 20 to Miami Heat. Will Riley goes 21st to the Wizards. We talked a little bit about Will. First off, what do you think about KJ going 20 to Miami?
I love Jakučionis, and I honestly feel like him falling to me was more of him he was like a master of his own demise, in the sense that he was so good early in the year that, like, if you talk to some people, you and I were talking at the time, we're like, is Jakučionis a top 5 pick? Because it does seem like he is, and it does feel like there was a world where if he kept up the pace he was playing in, November, December, January, early January, that there's a world where KJ is Egor Demin and the Nets take him number 8 and he's their pick there and they give him the keys as their guard or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, that's where he was trending. I had heard some kind of, notes about him maybe getting a little bit spooked by, sort of the draft hype. And, you could tell in his play, he got a little bit more timid and had some more turnover issues. Obviously, there's some shot conversations as well. But for the talent that is there, and for the player that he is, I really like it for Miami. And I feel like going to Miami is going to be a great system for him because Miami's about the basketball. Miami's about the work. Miami's about the conditioning. I think he's going to be in great shape. I think he's going to be able to develop down there. And I think it's going to be about the basketball. And he's not going to have the pressure or the expectations that he would if he was a number 7 or a number 8 or a number 9 pick. You know what I mean? I feel like for him, this is a better spot to be a little bit under the radar, a little bit less expectations. And I think he will be better in that type of setting. So I'm very happy for KJ.
Yeah. So I honestly had him this range on my board. I was a little bit lower on him than most. I worried a little bit about, I see a guy that awesome in a ball screen. I kind of question the ability to separate off the bounce. And then you pair that with the turnovers and the lack of kind of like efficient spot up shooting off the ball and then the defense. I didn't really see like a top 10 type pick. I thought that was really risky. Because I'm thinking, like, is he going to take the ball out of a primary ball handler for the NBA? And then off the ball, if he's not super athletic or a quick decision maker, or able to separate or a great shooter. But as I was overthinking my final board and I'm analyzing these players in depth, I've seen like just probably way too much. I like get the intrigue, right? So I'm arguing probably Egor and KJ, Will Riley, a couple other of the more polarizing cats. I had a lot of debates on the phone with, NBA people throughout the year, people like you. And I can see him finding success in Miami. I think that level of, toughness, he's got great feel for the game. He's got some good size. He's about 6'5", strong frame, rebounds, right? I'm at the Big Ten tournament and he's fighting for rebounds, throwing himself into physicality. The intangibles from all levels appear to be incredibly high level. Someone that they had to like kick out of the gym late at night at Illinois because he was just trying to work on his game so much. So I think that's a good landing spot for him. I think obviously Miami has been one of the best developmental programs of the past decades. So I like the pick at 20. I think there could be some good value there. Kind of getting through the end of this hour in. Drake Powell, Will Riley goes 21 to Washington. We talked about that. Drake Powell, 22. Asa Newell goes 23. So Atlanta initially had the 13th pick. They trade out. New Orleans gets Derik. They pick up a pretty high value 2026 pick, and they get a guy in Asa Newell who, if he goes 14, 15, 13, like I don't think people really would have blinked. Like he's a talented kid. So I like the move. I think it's a good pickup at 23. Fluid athlete, good tools. Swing skill is going to be the shooting, right? Defensive range. We talk about guys that have good film against Alex Sarr. He played at U19s 2 summers ago when he was 17 and just absolutely killed it. He's flying around, blocking shots, getting steals, playing the passing lanes. Awesome in transition. So I think that's a kind of a fun, good promising foundation at 23. What do you think of Asa Newell at 23?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a great pickup because, again, in that middle, once the Yang pick was made, it got like a little wonky in there in the middle where it was kind of like, where are we going? And then like the Timberwolves did like a fridge pick, you know what I mean? So then we were kind of off the beaten path. And then it felt like at this point we got back on schedule a little bit, like where Asa Newell, who I believe is a lottery talent, is just, yes, he's there. We should take him. Yes, he does need to develop a little bit. But I mean, you're looking at a guy who's like an elite level talent who, we're talking like Anthony Randolph, Brandon Wright, like someone like that, where it's like, if it works, it can really work. You know what I mean? And those guys, I know maybe didn't work in the fullest extent of what we're talking about in the NBA terms, but I really like him as a player. I like that he's staying in Georgia. He'll be comfortable in Georgia. And that's like a playoff body. You know what I mean? like even if Asa Newell, like the floor of Asa Newell is just like a nice, backup front court player that you can throw in there and like get you some good minutes and get you some rim protection, like it's a nice piece. And getting it at 23 is not a bad place to get it. So that's the worst case scenario. And best case scenario, he develops offensively. And my God, the sky's the limit,
Yeah, I actually had him 23 on my board, and it kind of felt a little too late. It was one of those where like you're looking at the numbers, you're like, oh, Asa 23, like that seems kind of
Yeah, that
low,
seems
right?
low. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
but he goes 23. I think that's good value, like you said. 24, another mid-major killer, Nick Clifford. Sacramento Kings trade in from the Thunder and grab Nick Clifford, one of the best plug-and-play wings in the draft. One of the older guys drafted last night, but can play make. He rebounds at a prolific rate, knocks down shots, defends. Pretty, seamless transition to the NBA. Mature dude, played a lot of roles in college. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, great trade up by the Kings. They kind of sat there. They looked at the board, kind of like what we're talking about right now, and they're like, "There's a lot of good players on the board." And I don't know their board in particular, but Scott Perry, my guy BJ Armstrong, now in the front office there, I think that they just saw Nick Clifford on the board, and they're like, "Hey, this is a guy that we had in our top 15. Why don't we just go in here and get him, because nobody else is making the move?" There was a lot of 3-and-D options that were on the board. Rasheer Fleming, we'll talk about, he's still on the board obviously, but for them to go get Nick Clifford, they wanted a grown up, they wanted somebody that can play with their kind of group of guys, and Nick Clifford checks all those boxes. And you talk about a guy who has grown into who he is as a player. We've seen the entire journey, so it's really cool to see him get to a point where he's a first round pick. I think he deserves it, and I thought that was a really savvy move by Scott Perry. He's in his he's setting up the regime there in Sacramento. For them to kind of splash in and get a player like Nick Clifford, that was a nice move for the Kings.
Yeah, definitely. If you see a guy on your board and he's still on the board and you can buy your way into the draft, go get him.
And they had no picks, so they were just like,
Yeah.
hey, like, let's go get a pick. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Nick Clifford, we did a film session with him on our YouTube. One of the more polished players in the draft, super self-aware, been through a lot of adversity. Yeah, I like the pick. I think Nick's we talked about Walter Clayton being one of those guys that, everyone likes, not very polarizing. I'd say Nick is in a similar vein where, everyone can kind of see the value, does a little bit of everything, just, a little bit older. I think some teams are a little bit more worried about the shooting. But yeah, like super versatile, super adaptable. Pick after that goes Jace Richardson to Orlando. Kind of penciled that one in from the analytical profile, the efficiency. And then if we're talking about, he's 6'1" guard, kind of a 2 guard, right? Played off the ball at Michigan State. I personally think this is a perfect landing spot for him to succeed. They got a bunch of big ball handlers. He can play off the ball, knock down shots, attack closeouts, make quick decisions, super fluid athlete. He's kind of a little polarizing too because of his size. And, sometimes the guys with the juiced analytical profiles, you'll see these boards on Twitter and they have them, 2 or 3.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's just like, all right, like that seems like a bit much. But yeah, Jace had a lot of fans, especially, these analytically driven front offices because of his efficiency. I think it makes a lot of sense in Orlando. I thought maybe Rasheer would go here, being a big, 3-and-D, big physical, late bloomer, 7'5" wingspan. We'll talk about him. I personally think he's the best player on the board as we start day 2. But what do you think of Jace going 25?
Well, I think if Jace was off the board as he should have been, then they would have taken Fleming. So I saw a lot of people talking about the Magic. They're like, well, how did they not take Rasheer Fleming? That was the guy that they were going to take. They really liked him. That was all the reports. Well, maybe they did, but they also didn't expect Jace Richardson to be there. And I think that Jace could actually slot in as their point guard of the future. Now, that would obviously take a lot of things to change, but like that's the vision of what Jace is for them. And if you got Paolo who can – let's just be honest. Like Paolo's the closest thing to LeBron that we actually have. I know that everybody's the next LeBron, but like Paolo actually, physically, you could see the creation skills that could potentially be there. Now he's got a ways to go, but I'm just saying, like with him and Franz, it's like Jace doesn't have to be Jeremiah Fears and create for everybody around him. He can play off the ball, like you said. He can spot up and shoot. He's also just really smart and a high IQ guy. And I think in my mind, he was like a lottery talent or like a fringe lottery talent, probably in that 14 to 17 range, right? So if you're the Magic, sure, like this is a win for us. We get a really high quality player, a high quality kid who has NBA pedigree, who knows how to play the game, who can play either our actual starting point guard, maybe best case scenario, or he could be a nice piece off the bench, a nice like combo guard that can take some ball handling duties if we need him to as well. So I thought it was a great pick. And for people that were going after the Magic for not going after a guy they had on their mock draft, get over it. Well, let him take the best player. You know what I mean? It's easy.
Yeah, believe it or not, the draft boards that matter are actually the ones within the NBA facilities.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. We talk about a little bit earlier the positional fits, or whether it's pre-draft, the NBA fans are like, "Oh, we need a power forward or we need a shooting guard," especially with the guards. Like there
Right.
aren't a lot of traditional PG set the table type of guys. So I thought it was interesting that, Jace in his pre-draft was very adamant. Their camp was very adamant that he's a point guard. I honestly don't think it really matters. I think it's
They did
him,
that for
right?
optics, though. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
they had to do that for optics. But again, it's about a team liking Jace and seeing that Jace fits. And also, you and I watched him play college all year. I never thought Jace was 6 foot tall. I thought he was 6'3".
Yeah.
And
I,
it never really stood out to me. It never looked weird. So I don't know how to explain that, but it's true. Like he never looked small to me. So
yeah, brief little tangent. I saw like a very credible like NBA type beat or whatever saying like Ace Bailey's stock dropped because he measured a certain thing at the combine. It's like, what are we talking about? Like they colleges have inflated heights for as long as basketball has been around. They've been doing it since Naismith was using a peach, right?
of course. I mean, Bronny James was 6'4" and Isaiah Collier was
Yeah.
6'5". You know what I mean? Like this is the world that we live in, and we all love it. Like let it go.
Yeah,
It
it is
worked.
very much a non-issue. So, but to Jace, I feel like it's perfect to the quote we talked about with the traits. Like his traits are pretty adaptable. He makes quick decisions, demands a closeout. A lot of NBA offense is off a closeout. They have a bunch of big ball handlers that can initiate. They don't really have a point guard. So yeah, can he bring the ball up and get them into action? I think so. Yeah, can he play off Paulo, play off Franz, play off Desmond Bain? Tackle closeout, make passes. Yeah, he showed that. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
intrigued to see what he looks like in summer league. He's going to be someone I think because of his unique profile, his height, his NBA pedigree from his family. I think he's going to be someone the media kind of starts these narratives about just because that's kind of what they do. But I wish him the best. We talked Brooklyn. They take a bunch of playmakers. Very unique draft.
Unique.
They take 5 players. Hugo Gonzalez goes 28 to Boston. This felt like a very predictable pick as well. Get someone from Spain, very experienced, a lot of international pedigree, kind of a 6'6" wing, good length, very competitive, high motor, defends, rebounds, runs the floor. It's really just going to be the shooting as a swing skill. So I think him landing in an organization like Boston, where he can kind of develop slowly, work on his game, be selfless. Their front office talked about, being so impressed. I mean, this is kind of a common theme, but being very impressed with the person in their Zoom meetings, his ability to accept the role at Real Madrid. I think this was a very clean cut pick.
Yeah, I like that pick. I thought it was going to be like an Adu Thiero pick, maybe kind of out of left field or
Yeah,
something. You know what I mean?
I
Like
could have seen
that's the
that.
only.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like something where like Brad Stevens kind of gives a wink wink to us college basketball guys that he's still watching. You know what I mean? That he's like, I can't believe this guy's still on the board, so I have to take him out of principle at number 28. But this felt like the right pick, But I thought maybe Brad had a little something up his sleeve, but it's okay. I'm not going to be upset about Hugo Gonzalez. It's okay.
Yeah, I had heard some murmurs that there's certain championship team that was kind of trying to get Hugo and stash him. Him going to a team like this just makes a lot of sense. I'm sure they'll probably. Actually, I don't know. I'm not going to speak on things I don't know. I would assume they
Well,
probably bring him
they
over.
did say that he was going to play. Yeah, they said he's going to play.
Yeah.
So I mean, they
So
also lie about that too. So I mean, as of now, he's
yeah,
going to play.
yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously they have a lot more optionality next year with Tatum out. They potentially, they technically have Anthony Simons right now. We'll see if he stays there. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
optionality, a lot of youth guys that could potentially get opportunity. There were some rumblings they were trying to get into the lottery. They interviewed a lot of the marquee players in this draft. So there was definitely some interesting things going on there. 29, Con Knueppel gets another wing shooter in there. His friend Liam McNeely from Montvert goes 29. If you listen to Tate's show, he's talked to Liam McNeely a lot. Big East podcast for sure. I like the pick. I think Liam fell on my board a little bit too. This is about where I had him. I think I had him 27 or 28. Good shooter, good feel, tough, competitive. I just worry about the foot speed, worry about the defense. Being someone that, if you're not getting picked that high in the draft, we talk about Adou Thiero. Like, I had him higher than Liam because I see what's going to get him on the floor immediately to merit reps to develop. And Thiero's a beast of a defender, super disruptive, maybe the best athlete in the entire draft. Him or VJ. We'll talk about him probably being one of the more dynamic players available in the second round. Probably goes one of the first 3 or 4 picks. But yeah, I like the Liam pick. Yannick goes 30th. Penn State big man.
That was all you. You got him drafted. You came on the show. You were like, "This is the guy that you need to know." And I mean, I was happy for him, man. I couldn't believe he was at. That was another one where I was like, "Yannick is here. Like, he's at the draft." So when he came walking out, that was a great moment for Yannick. That was awesome. Great for Penn State basketball. Their first round pick in Penn State basketball history. So that was cool. That was like a nice cap to the first round. It was a very long first round, but Yannick being the last one, that was fun.
Yeah, I agree. I love to see it. We talked about it on One Shining podcast. Someone that, I'm not gonna lie, like, I was tipped off on like the year prior when he was at Northern Illinois, and I click his box score numbers, and I'm like, okay, like this is a deep cut. This is a deep cut guy.
Yeah, who found this guy? Yeah.
I go on Synergy. I cheat a little bit. I go to his dunks first, and then I go to his blocks, and I was like, okay, yeah, like this could be a serious guy as he continues to develop. Goes to Penn State. I love Mike Rhodes. I think he's one of the best evaluators, best recruiters, given the resources he's had at VCU and Penn State. Very consistently gets guys at a low ranking, whether it's out of high school or out of the portal, and they outperform kind of where they're measured. But yeah, Yannick, probably outside of Cedric, biggest riser in pre-draft. Someone that goes to elite camp, measures incredibly well, super explosive, shows flashes in the scrimmages. And what we talked about on your show is it's very translatable, right? With all these players withdrawing, Yaxel goes back. He was someone that had fans in the first round. LeBaron Philon, we talked about in depth on your show. Very intriguing talent. Probably is, talked about in the first round. Plenty of other guys. And Yannick was a big benefiter of this. Does well in Chicago. I'm at his pro day. He's like breaking the backboard, like with the dunks and the blocks. And it just translates, right? He's a lob threat. He blocks shots and he can rebound, sets wide screens. So I think that was kind of like a no-brainer, somewhere from like 28 to 35, just from, there's only so many of those bigs each draft. You always need a third big man on the roster. Maybe he ends up being more than that. Hope he does, but I like that pick. First round takeaways, before we kind of summarize best players on the second round, like as we get through this entire first round, like what is kind of your overarching takeaway? Like, what were you kind of thinking after the first round, other than how's Rasheer Fleming still on the board?
Yeah, I mean, I am shocked that those guys are still on the board. I was a little shocked at how weird the teens got. You know what I mean? Like, once the lottery was over and, that was kind of nipped in the bud, it just felt like everything was up for, and on the table, and we got a little bit lost in the middle of the draft. So I still feel like there's a lot of talent because we kind of got drunk on where we were in the draft, and everyone's like, hey, this is our shot. Let's just go do it right now. Let's take a swing here, or, let's just go get our guy. It doesn't really matter what the board says. So I do feel like there's some talent. And, just generally it was kind of a ho-hum draft a little bit. I heard Jade Billis, he was like, look, it is what it is. This is going to be the Cooper Flag draft. It's just like any other draft. We don't know who's actually going to be the guy. We could look up in 5 years and Noah Essengue is leading, the NBA in scoring. And I look like an idiot because I'm like, why did the Bulls take Noah Essengue? That's the world that we live in with the draft. We all know it. But I thought there was a lot of talent, but there's still a lot of talent still left on the board.
Yeah, I agree. I think Cooper Flag had such a big frenzy around him. Great freshman year. Unfortunately, I think a little bit got taken away with the whole ace narrative pre-draft. That became some whole big thing. Dylan Harper probably wasn't talked about enough for the type of player he is.
And the type of kid he is, by the way. Like, Dylan Harper is like I mean, you couldn't really ask. Every time I see Dylan Harper do any interview, and even when they asked him about Ace, like he honestly helped the PR of Ace, just him talking about Ace. Like I had an NBA scout text me like the video and was like, Dylan Harper doing overtime for his teammate right now. But I'm like, that's not really what he's doing. He's just being who he is, you know? So I'm a big fan of Dylan Harper, and I think you're right. We didn't talk about him enough.
Definitely. And I think on to that, something that impressed me throughout the year and why I was a bit resistant to how these narratives were forming. You don't really see two top 3, top 4, ends up being top 5 picks play together, lose, and be so positive and like have such a great relationship. I think that speaks volumes to like both of their just kind of like character and coaching staff. And, like they did have a disappointing season. Dylan got like sick. He was hurt a little bit in January. Ace missed games to start the season with like a back injury. Like, yeah, they didn't have the season they wanted. And a lot of the narratives kind of took over and took away from like the actual basketball. But I think both of them can have tremendous careers. And then outside of that, I would say the thing that sticks out most to me is, building the board throughout the year. Like 10 to 20 or 9 to like 18, like it's kind of flat from a talent perspective. There's some distinct strengths, some distinct weaknesses in some of these guys, a lot of polarizing playmakers. But I think like there's going to be some real hits. We look at the playoffs right now, or the NBA finals last week. I mean, you have Andrew Nembhard, 31st pick, Aaron Wiggins, 55th pick. Halliburton was, I think, the 12th pick. He got traded.
12th.
SGA, 11th pick, got traded. Siakam was in the 20s. Miles Turner was outside the top 10. Alex Caruso was undrafted. TJ McConnell was undrafted. Like the draft is difficult. It is so difficult. So I'm not going to be, labeling winners and losers and, write off these players. I'm intrigued to see how it goes. I think Summer League should be fun. But yeah, that's kind of my overarching takeaway throughout this entire year. I'm really confident there's going to be some good players that got drafted in the double digits. But Tate, I really appreciate your time. You guys got to make sure you lock into One Shining Podcast, Through the Ringer, Figures Network. What else you got going on? I see you a little bit everywhere.
Man, I'm just, talking draft to any and everybody. I love talking draft with you. We're going to be texting, keeping up with what's happening. So you're always locked in. I appreciate you having me on. I love having you on my show. So it's some nice synergy here. You love to see it. And we just love basketball. That's really what it comes down to. And we're not know-it-alls. So you live in a world with a lot of people that are know-it-alls. And you're just like, I want to find somebody that's not going to try to, snarf at me the entire time. So Jacob Myers, league.him, the best. I appreciate you having me on, man. Anytime you need me, I'm around. Just holler. You already know.